Good afternoon. I am State Senator Carlo Leone coming to you from Stamford, Connecticut, my home district as a state senator and a legislator for our community. And today I am with Dr. Winifred Hamilton, our Superintendent of Schools, and we're just going to have a little conversation on all the great things that is happening in Stamford regarding education and touch upon several topics, and we'll see how things go from there. So with that, thank you, Dr. Hamilton, for coming on the show. It's very good to see you and helpful for you to share some information on all issues in Stamford. So with that, before we really start with one or two questions, why don't you just give me a little lead up on you coming up into the superintendent role. I know you came up through the school system here locally, and I think that's a great story to share.
My life's work has been in Stamford. I've been here, I hate to talk in decades, but several decades, which makes me a person who probably, when I look at this whole district, I rarely can go to a meeting where I haven't taught you, hired you, or maybe worked with your mother or father, which in my life is, I don't have 6 degrees of separation. It's more like 2 for my work in Stamford. I've been a teacher at both middle and high school. I've been an assistant principal at both middle and high school, and I've been a principal of a middle school. I've been the assistant superintendent, the deputy superintendent, and I find myself today as the superintendent. And although the verdict may still be out, I think I was the right person at the right time to take us into and be prepared for this 21st century. I love the district, and it's been my one of the joys to be able to serve this district and the children here.
Well, we thank you for your service, and I get a lot of feedback as a state legislator, and one of the things is always the fact, why can't we hire from within our own community? And the fact that you are here as a result of that is a good thing and doesn't happen enough. So I'm very glad that you're here. But now that we're able to talk a little bit, I want to talk about all things education. We may not have enough time to talk about everything, but there's a lot of great initiatives ongoing. There's concerns that parents are always worried about, standard fare. Maybe we can touch upon a few of them. One thing that I know is going to be happening soon in the fall of this year, 2014, will be Right Tech is going to be scheduled to open once again after being closed for a couple years. For the folks that weren't aware, it had shut down due to a lack of enrollment, and the building was a little tired. We are now spending a lot of money to get the building fabricated for the 21st century and with some new programs. So how do you see that fitting in with the Stamford public system?
Well, as you know, enrollment is one of our challenges. We have a growing enrollment, it's an exciting time to be working in a city that's not, as some of my colleagues in other areas are winding up with diminishing populations, and they're closing schools. We right now are looking to open a school. And I think with Right Tech, which always was an asset to this community, it was unfortunate. It was a viable option for families and for students. And one of my goals from whatever seat I sat in this district was to give families and children choices and options. Correct. And I think Right Tech is just another one of those opportunities for families to say, and every parent knows their child best, and every child needs to feel this is the right decision for me. So to have that option and to have it reopened again, and I think in the foresight of our governor that he realized that this was a wonderful plus for Stamford and the community, and really for all of Fairfield County, to have this opportunity for students to pick a program, pick a rigorous program. It is not a vocational program where students will only be able to finish high school. This gives students the option of, do they want to go on for a master's degree? Do they want to go on and own their own business? Or do they want to step into internships and business opportunities? So I'm delighted, and we've worked with the NIVIA from the state to promote this program. We have visitations going on right now in all of our middle schools, and we're looking forward to helping support and offer this as another opportunity for students and families.
And I've seen some of the online advertisements that Right Tech is now going to be scheduled to open, so there are people that can go online, do a preview of what is to come, and we're hoping it's going to be quite successful. Due to the aftermath of the tragedy in Newtown and Sandy Hook, school security and the mental health, can you elaborate a little bit? We passed legislation to bolster all those things. Is that being helpful for you as a superintendent of the school? And how do you see that playing out going forward? And if not, how can we help or be a little bit more helpful, I should say, to the degree possible?
Well, absolutely, because we are right now working on much of what we're doing. We're looking for some of our reimbursement back from the state with some of the legislation that's passed. And without a doubt, Sandy Hook in my lifetime, which is a pretty long history in this Stamford community, I've never been more shocked or horrified by what happened. I don't think it's the worst nightmare that one could envision happening in education. So I don't think any of us in education, it kind of rocked our world.
Sure.
We can no longer think that, well, my child is safe in school. I think we all have to do as much as we can to ensure that a horrific event like that, as much as we can prevent something like that happening. So we've not only reinforced, and I went through a phase 1 with our Board of Finance for a supplemental appropriation to say, what do we need to do immediately? And we prioritize. We need to make sure all our doors lock. We need to make sure all our cameras for the entrance and exits of our buildings are functioning so we can identify someone coming. We need to expand those cameras to the parking lots,
Sure.
into areas where we can get a bigger view of what's happening. Our intercom systems, we needed to have an intercom system that allowed at any and multiple portals within that building to be able to, if the office is not available because someone has entered it, from another area, from a custodial area, from the gym, whatever, I can communicate with staff.
And as superintendent, it's not just one school you're talking about. You're talking about every school in the city, which is quite numerous, correct?
Yeah, well, we have 20 schools, and I must tell you that when I looked at and read the report and saw many of my fellow superintendents throughout the state in school systems that had much less in the way of security in place, Stamford right now has 2 SROs, school resource officers, in
Correct.
each of our high schools. We have 11 security guards at our 2 high schools, 2 at AITE, which is a school that is only an inter-district magnet, that is only has 700 students in it. And we also have in our middle schools 2 security guards, all of them with cameras and doors that lock. And I just recently, we're in the process now, we've been working, we piloted last year at Newfield Elementary, and we will have, hopefully in the very near future, a device called a Sarah button. And basically every teacher in that building will have a 2-button security pod, really, a little fob, I should say, that they can carry with them. They can carry it around their neck on their identification. They can carry it on their belt or whatever, or in their pocket, and it will allow, if they push it, it will not only send an alarm throughout the school about an intruder, but it also will automatically call 911. Okay. So, because we don't have security guards in the elementary. So it's sort of like the New York advertisement, see something, say something. This allows every teacher to be vigilant and aware of what might be an intruder or a dangerous situation for children.
And you're working with the local police to make sure that the response time is quick and...
We've had the mayor, we've had my director of security, John Parada, a former deputy police chief. We have worked with, we had an audit done by our police and our director of police and our director of safety for the city, Ted Jankowski. All of these people were involved in doing an audit, and it took about 4 months, but that report is what I'm using to respond to ensure that phase 1 is in place, and as we move to phase 2, it might be the extension of, do we need to have, we're having an architect look at, do we need to have planters or things that impede the entrance to a building with a vehicle, something that would be not an attractive nuisance for kids to climb on, but something that might be attractive and yet would keep someone from being able to accidentally or purposefully drive a vehicle into the front and open up, the door area and enter a building without, having to buzz their way through.
Well, unfortunately, it's a new world with security being more of a threat than ever before, and when once it was not even a consideration or a necessary consideration, where schools were much safer. But I'm glad that we're doing that, and we'll continue to do as much as possible on those fronts.
And the legislators and the governor, when they give us funding, it is definitely being used to make our schools and our city safer for children and families. So we are appreciative of that reimbursement that we receive when we spend dollars.
Yeah, and we need to work hard to make sure we get our fair share.
Absolutely.
Speaking of safety for children inside the school, how's the school climate for the children? We've heard issues, and we've all read the sad cases of a bullying situation or things of that nature. I know you're working very hard to make sure that those issues don't occur or don't occur as frequently. So can you just share a little bit about where we are on that topic?
Well, people say what you invest in you care about. I think people will notice or should know that over 400,000 of my budget this year is on mental health. Around the areas of, and of course, bullying is very closely tied to mental health. You can, if a child experiences bullying in school or bullying anywhere, it can make them very depressed. It can make them suicidal, as we've heard in some horrendous cases, sure. And it could make them really not want to come to school. So it has real negative effects that, affect the total child.
And this happens at all levels. It's
Absolutely.
not just high school, it's not just kindergarten, it can be at any level.
And part of what we've invested in is training for staff. What do you see? How do you recognize it? Interventions and places where children can talk. Advisories in our school. We're in the process of negotiating to have advisories in our high school. Why? Because one of the areas in which we know that children, if they have one adult in a building that they feel they can go to and they feel that knows them and they can speak securely and safely to say, I go in that class every day and someone's bothering me. Mm-hmm. And that adult is going to intercede to protect that child or to get to the right source or to involve parents to report it and to remediate it, then that's one bullying situation that won't occur. But we have to create that climate and that relationship. So we're doing a lot of training for staff and a lot of training for our students about the education. Again, a program that I started years ago in a school was about victims, aggressors, and bystanders. What role do you play? And there's role playing that students do and ways in which we try to educate our kids, parents, and our community about things we need to do and be aware of.
And we're running short on time. We're almost finished, but I just want to touch upon one more topic, and actually it's combined Common Core and the teacher evaluations. I know it's a very big initiative in the state. We're getting a lot of feedback that it's too much too soon. The legislature is in the throes of trying to figure out how to extend or provide more time for that to take effect. What are you hearing that we need to hear up at the state capitol to try and how to make this as successful as possible?
And I think I mentioned before that I'm in 3 different superintendency groups, and it is the main topic at usually every time we meet. The perfect storm of the evaluation and the Common Core, it's a lot of change happening at the same time. There are parts of it that are very much the right work. I think the Common Core, having a rigorous standard-based curriculum, is the right intent. I think combining that with the evaluation and someone's certification or continuation has put another added layer or pressure. I'm not against, certainly the Common Core and rigorous expectations, but I think that's going to take time to change what we already do to ratchet it up to be a higher level. Achievement is certainly one of the areas that our district and each school and principal is held accountable for. So, that's work we have to do. The evaluation piece, there's a lot of data management, there's a lot of meetings.
Sure.
We all agree that maybe we could have fewer meetings for more experienced teachers and more meetings for some of our newcomers so that we could really help them develop and give them the professional development they need to become master teachers someday. But these have been challenges that are happening at the same time. So, slowing up that process and giving us a little more time to do it right, I think everyone would agree would be the best tactic at this time.
Well, I'm hearing a lot of that information. I think the legislature will act to that degree, and we even had talks with the governor, and so we're hopeful that we can accomplish that. Dr. Hamilton, thank you so much for being with us today. Your feedback has been wonderful. We will share this with the community, and we thank you for your time.
Welcome.
Thank you, everyone, for coming to the show and for checking in with us. We'll see you next time on our next show, and with that, thanks for attending. We're here for a second segment to talk a little bit more about education and share and have an exchange of information. So with that, Dr. Hamilton, thank you again for giving us a little bit more of your time. I know you have quite a busy schedule, so we'll try and keep this short and sweet and relatively painless. I know a topic that is very dear to your heart is early childhood education, and I know there's quite a bit underway in that regard. Could you expand a little bit upon that, because it is a goal of the governor, it is a goal of the legislature. We have put in resources to expand that, and we'd love to hear how we're doing in Stamford.
Well, I think you've hit the nail on the head that we have a governor who's very much proactive about early childhood, and he isn't just talking about it. He actually was one of the started one of the most innovative programs years ago with our Child Learning Center that is in partnership with our school district, where we actually place teachers in the early childhood and we actually do professional development. It was a wonderful, ahead of the curve move to really make sure that every child has that preschool experience, so when they enter school, there's much more of a level playing field. And it kind of bridges the gap between maybe economics and language barriers by having children have that experience. And we right now have all but maybe 23% of our student population that has a preschool experience, and that may be in private daycare or CLC. The last few years, I've believe and have invested as heavily as I can using grant funds to give that experience as much as possible to prepare students coming into our kindergarten and also to prepare them for kindergarten. And so using grant money, I've added in our summer school for kindergarten students going into first grade, which isn't one of the state mandates, but I think that if we can prepare students who are struggling a little bit from kindergarten to get them ready by a summer experience for first grade, it's much a better arrangement than holding a child back for another year of kindergarten, because maybe they just need a little bump up. And we know over the summer, students can lose ground. So by having some summer school experience, that's one thing we've done. I've also taken students who've been in Head Start and then have no experience over the summer, and I've extended a summer school that is 6 weeks, not the normal 3 weeks, 6 hours a day, which is normally summer school would be 3 hours. So it actually has doubled the time and the length of time that students are exposed to not drill and kill in preschool, but enrichment activities, painting, going to the library, looking at maps, traveling, and field trips to museums, enriching their environment at a very receptive time span. I'm using all of our Title I monies in that kindergarten and first and second grade. I absolutely believe that if you invest early and often, I think our need to do interventions after elementary school, into middle school, or to attack the problem of children that don't read well in middle or can't read the level of textbook in high school, if we work in the early years and get students on a level playing field, I think that our need for all of those interventions, if not removed, will be drastically reduced.
And we hear all the time, but I guess the data is starting to show now that those that get early childhood education, it's a very strong predictor of their success in education and in their future lives, that if they get it early enough, that really shows the success rate moving forward. Is that correct?
Actually, Connecticut has come out with a statement that prison seats are built by for children who don't read by third grade. Many parts of the country, I think Ohio is one whole state that has said that we will not pass children on in third grade if they can't read at a certain level. I think everyone in the country is beginning to realize that we have a window of opportunity when children are most receptive, when learning can be multiplied if we have the right people in place to work in the right time span, because we have a lot of working parents. We have parents who have English barriers. So now you have a child who's trying to learn to read, and perhaps the only time that they hear the words or the language is in their 5 hours of time at school.
Correct.
So, how we extend that, how we maximize that time is work that, now the language, art, or the reading component in our schools is of a 5-hour day, 3 of them is based on just language acquisition and reading. So, it's definitely been identified and realistically is the area that we need to address. And I think the math will happen, the science will happen, but I have to be able to read in order to solve problems.
And since you mentioned language, I know being an urban center, the city of Stamford has a disproportionate number of languages that as an educator you have to deal with comparative to some of the other communities in the state. And I'm always amazed at the number of languages in the city of Stamford. And the last number I had heard was around 60 different languages, but I understand that's not even correct any longer.
Yeah, it's increased to over 100, and we also have
100 different languages,
right,
or variations
of languages that we have, what's called English as a second language. We have programs that students come in and they're placed in different programs according to the level of English understanding and communication. And, our English language learner population is, at the 13% mark. Statistics are out there. We have not done as well with some of our struggling learners as we need to. So I've added additional staff and additional professional development and training for staff around how do we best communicate and teach English language learners. And I think it's an investment like early childhood that's going to pay benefits in the long run.
And if parents need to get more information or learn how to get involved to get their kids into this type of education, what would be the best avenue for them to start that process?
They need to go to the Stamford Public School website. We've made a way in which you can absolutely look at everything from registration to magnet schools, to programs, to lotteries, down to who the administrator is, what the staff and school look like. Our StamfordPublicSchool.org is, the best place to go, and the menu is very clear. And if that fails or parents don't have access to a computer, we have an Office of Family Engagement. Mike Meyer is our Executive Director of Family Engagement.
Yes.
They can call Mike Meyer or they can call the Superintendent's office, and I'd be happy to direct them to the right resource.
And they can always stop in at the Government Center to get some of that
Absolutely.
information. Great. And speaking as children and education, Stamford is a growing community. It's actually doing fairly well economically compared to other parts of the state. And as a result of that success can sometimes be difficult for an educator with increasing enrollments. As more people want to live here, obviously, eventually they're going to create families and have kids and then send them to the schools. And I know that that's a variation over a given point of time, and we have a small bubble now that we're having to deal with. So could you share information on how increasing enrollment is affecting the education?
Well, in the last 3 years, we've had over 700 new families with children have moved into Stamford Public School at the elementary level in particular. Our elementary schools, on an average, are over 600. We have the same amount of schools as Norwalk Public Schools does, for instance, 20 and 20, and yet Norwalk Public Schools has 2,400 less students. Their average elementary schools are in the 400s or mid 400s. Two schools that are under 600. It's not always about a small school, but it's certainly about the opportunity for teachers to interact with your child on a regular basis, which makes for a better student-teacher ratio when we don't have students that have such a large class size. Our average class size is 21.7 at the first grade through fifth grade, and I added 7 additional kindergarten teachers last year to keep our kindergarten at 7. Sure. At 20, I'm sorry. These ratios are important. Again, we talk about early childhood. This is an opportunity for us. If there's any place small is better, it's certainly in the elementary school, and
Sure.
not just the children, but the ratio of student to teacher, so that we can really know our children well, recognize their strengths and weaknesses, and where we need to support them. We are in the process now of hoping and working with the city and working with several committees and our Board of Ed to try to acquire a space, an additional property, a way in which we can open a new school in Stamford. I think the population, the need, the opportunity for Stamford, which has always been a school that works on behalf of children in this community and understand the importance of education, that this is well worth what the investment might initially be in making Stamford an attractive area for families.
Well, thank you for all of that, Dr. Hamilton. We appreciate it. And that gives me a little consolation that the future of our kids are off to a great start under some of the programs that you're in charge of, so we appreciate that very much.
Thank you.
With that, this is the end of our show. Thank you for visiting once again. This is State Senator Carlo Leone coming to you from Stamford with Dr. Winifred Hamilton, Superintendent in Schools. Until then, we'll see you on the next show. Thank you.